You are listening to the Intelligent Vocalist Podcast, episode 176.
Welcome to the Intelligent Vocalist with John Henny. This is the podcast dedicated to help you be a smarter, better, more informed singer. And now, your host for the Intelligent Vocalist, John Henny.
Hey there, this is John Henny. Welcome back to another episode of The Intelligent Vocalist. I do so appreciate you spending your precious listening time with me. Oh yes, and time we have in lockdown. I live in Los Angeles County, and I know that worldwide everyone is having a different experience during this pandemic. Los Angeles County, however, obviously in California, and we have more than 50% of the coronavirus cases in the state. So LA County has been hit rather hard. We are under some severe lockdown rules, although not everyone is taking this seriously, and it's kind of sad to see that this is breaking down along political lines. I don't really talk about politics. Number one, because I'm not a political science major. Any political opinions that I would have would probably only be interesting to those who share my political opinions, and my political opinions are probably full of some misinformation and error, and I just don't feel confident enough in them to share them, and my own confirmation bias. And so I do my best to avoid confirmation bias, but I'm a human being after all, and it's going to creep into things. And I think knowledge really helps us see clearly through that. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yes, in Los Angeles, it's still pretty tough. They are beginning, just phase 2 is going to allow retail shops to open, florists. I don't know why they had to say out loud, florists and toy stores were pointed out. So if you need some toys, you're in luck. But it's only for curbside pickup. You're not allowed to go into the store. You're supposed to keep social distancing, which I'm very distressed as I go outside my hermetically sealed doors to see the lack of social distancing and the kind of masks optional attitude that some people take. But most people kind of get this. But in terms of me reopening my music academy, what I have, and I've talked about it before, I do my own voice lessons. The majority of my students are on Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, etc. But I do have in-person students, or I did, and then I have a rather large music academy that teaches instruments, piano, drums, violin, guitar, and of course voice. And that has had to completely shut down. That's all gone online. And I'm trying to look at, or I was trying to look at the realistic reopening of the academy based on the phases. And I kind of figured we were in the category of hairstylists or therapeutic massage. But upon further I wouldn't say research, but just me gathering information. That seems a little unlikely in the near future just because of the protocols that are being demanded and the distancing. And it's going to be really hard to teach in the setup that we have. I mean, we would just have to have ginormous rooms and the students and the teachers at opposite ends. And then there is the whole issue of singing, which is very problematic. This is an interesting disease in that we've known about the flu or been studying the flu for over 100 years, but there are still parts of the flu that we don't understand. There are holes in our knowledge. And this was pointed out in a National Association of Teachers of Singing chat that you can watch on YouTube, and I will put the link to it. It's a chat on COVID-19, and they brought in, I believe his name's Dr. Milton, who is an expert in these types of infectious diseases. They also brought in an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and it's a rather fascinating conversation. And Dr. Milton was pointing out the flu and how we have holes in our knowledge, how much more so a disease that we've only known about for 5 months. So there's so much that we don't know. And I think therein lies the problem and the misinformation and the politics jumping in. Although I did just read today that the Center for Disease Control has said that contact through objects, boxes, if you've gone shopping or your Amazon box, you're highly, highly unlikely to contract the disease from that, even if someone who's sick has handled that particular object. That even though it's the COVID is still alive on the surface, it's just very difficult for you then to touch it, and then I think you'd basically just have to smear your hands all over it and rub it in your eyes, although they do recommend that you still wash your hands, don't touch your face, all those good things. But there is some good news coming out of it. And the way that I look at this, and actually the way that I steer myself through this rather confusing reality that we find ourselves in, is I look for consensus. And I've been seeing people posting things along the lines of no one knows better than you, do your own research. And for me, that's really not good advice, because that's usually an invitation to start looking at really alternative sources of information. And it tends to lead to conspiracies and little secret cabals of people who are pulling the strings. And for me, doing your own research, especially in something like COVID, I am not an infectious disease expert. I am not a doctor. I don't have the ability to look at a YouTube video and know if this is correct information or not. And so when something comes out of left field and it goes against medical and scientific consensus, I will dismiss it. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, because the greatest minds amongst us are working on this, and they're solving this. And scientific consensus really is the key of the greatest minds. What do most of them say? I had people in my life try and share the video of the doctors in Bakersfield working in an urgent care clinic, which here in the U.S., they're emergency rooms that are usually in like industrial parks, where you have manufacturing, etc. And they're just places for people to go to. They're not attached to a hospital. They're kind of like little private emergency rooms. And these doctors had an opinion that was different from what the experts were saying. And in my mind, if I have a heart condition and 50 of the world's leading cardiologists are telling me one thing, and a podiatrist from Pacoima is telling me something else, I'm going with the experts. I'm going with the consensus. And so I'm going with consensus with coronavirus. I take it very seriously, and I'm really taking it seriously for those people that are under my employ, for those people who would be students. So I do not plan on reopening my music academy for a very long time until I can be absolutely sure. And that brings me to singing. And there's not good news on the singing front. And you can watch this Nats chat on YouTube with the experts. But basically, when we are phonating, think of a trumpet player's lips. And the trumpet player's lips buzz to create sound. And then the lips go into the trumpet. And I've talked about this before, that the sound waves interact with the acoustic space of the trumpet to give us the sound of a trumpet. But one thing that trumpets have is they have spit valves, because as you are buzzing your lips, you are creating all kinds of spit, and you have to empty this in a trumpet. Now, when you are singing, when you're phonating, it's like little buzzing trumpet lips. And what you are doing is, as you are phonating, you are aerosolizing what's in your saliva, basically. You're aerosolizing what's coming out from your lungs. And speech has been seen to be a problem. That's why they think a lot of the initial outbreaks were at conferences and gatherings where people are talking a lot. And that's an issue, because all of that is being aerosolized where you can breathe it. And that's the primary mode of transmission. And singing, you've got so much lung power going. And essentially, you're very often on a long line, you're emptying your lungs. Now, something interesting happens when you push all the air out of your lungs. You have airways within that will collapse, if you will. And imagine if you put dishwashing liquid on your hands and get it rather wet, and then bring your hands together and then pull your hands apart. You'll get very often like a bubble will form. So when you collapse these airways in your lungs, then you take in another breath. Now these bubbles have formed, and with your next breath, that all comes rushing out. And there are people just in their breathing that expel much more particles than the rest of the population. And the doctor in the chat talks about the 80-20 rule, and about 20% of us expel about 80% of the particles. So there are people just by their breathing who are far more dangerous in terms of spreading this. And as I'm sure you know, the big problem with COVID-19 as opposed to SARS is, in other diseases, you have symptoms before you are contagious, whereas with COVID-19, you are at the height of being contagious before you show symptoms. So this idea of taking people's temperature, well, that's great, but so many people are just going to slip by. And so, and with singing, oh my goodness, they are tracking down some huge outbreaks I'm sure you've heard of to choir rehearsals. And one of the issues with reopening churches is allowing singing. That's a major sticking point in Germany, is they want to be able to sing. And singing is just putting anyone who's sick, anyone who's contagious, you're just putting this on blast. It's like those big confetti shooters that you will see at sporting events. You are just hurling the virus far further than 6 feet. And you get a very, very fine mist from singing. The big droplets from a sneeze, of course, sneezing or coughing is bad. But the big droplets will fall rather quickly, whereas these fine little particles will hang in the air much longer, and they can get more deeply into your respiratory tract. And that seems to be one of the reasons that people will get much greater degrees of illness from this COVID. And there was even a quote that singing is as dangerous as coughing. So the reality is, in terms of singing in a one-on-one voice lesson, or singing with others, or singing in a choir, mask is not going to do it. You are blowing so hard that the protection that masks are affording you and others is mitigated to a large degree. And we are probably, in terms of getting an antidote, if you will, or a treatment for COVID, 6 to 12 months away. But it's really, really not going to be safe until we have a vaccine. And the earliest, by some miracle, maybe 18 months, probably closer to 2 years. Then it has to be mass manufactured, and it has to be given to enough of us that we get this herd immunity, and we can get this shut down. So it's going to be many, many months before we can safely sing with others. And it breaks my heart to say that, but singing is an extremely high risk activity. Never thought I'd have to say that. Now, I've played some gigs in my rock and roll days where in some shady places where, yeah, singing was a bit of a high risk. I mean, I've been pelted with ice. People have threatened to beat me up after gigs. Yeah, maybe the YouTube trolls aren't so bad now in retrospect. But no, singing is something we're not going to be able to do together. So it's really the time, though, to not lose your connection to singing. And I've said it before, I'm actually diving back into my voice. I'm taking some private lessons with different teachers. I have a lesson coming up with Daniel Formica, who I've interviewed on the podcast. It's just great to have someone else hear my voice and work through issues. It's very hard as a teacher to work on your voice. That's a whole other podcast. Teaching can be one of the best things for your voice, and it also can really throw your voice out of whack. And so it's time to get my voice back in whack. And maybe going to do some recording, just digging into the guitar a little more. I'm just really kind of burying myself in music, working on projects. Again, my book is now with the editor. My next book, the tentative title is Beginning Singing. And this is going to be a book for beginners. I'm also hard at work on a corresponding course, online course for beginning singers. But it's really not worth it to get yourself sick and even more so a loved one who is at risk. And singing will come back. This will be behind us. Oh my gosh, I remember just when this all started on a podcast, making some joke that hopefully in 2 weeks I'll look back and say, well, that was weird. And that statement now, it was just so naive and ill-informed. Who was that guy? It's not going to be 2 weeks. It may be a couple of years. I want to be proved wrong. I really, really do. But I just beseech all of you to just keep yourselves safe. Don't fall into the political squabble and the idea of this is an infringement of rights. I've seen people saying this is about control with the LA Board of Supervisors, and I'm thinking, well, what does that control benefit them? They're destroying the economy just to tell people they can't go to the beach or to cancel in-person graduations at school. That's a control that these evil politicians aspire to? I don't think so. And certain things we will be wrong about. But again, I'm just going to stay with the consensus. I'm going to stay with the experts, with the people who've dedicated their lives to doing this. And I'm not going to make the mistake of just listening to one of them, but I'm going to look for what the majority of them are saying. Here in the U.S., it's creating political divisions, which I find sad, and I could certainly rant my ill-informed political opinions for the next hour, but I will refrain from that. This is the intelligent vocalist, not half-intelligent political talk. So I will get off my soapbox. I really do wish you well. I really hope that this turns out to be a beneficial time for you. And for some of us, maybe the fog is clearing. I will admit the early days of this, I woke up every day just feeling like I was punched in the face. I felt like I wanted to go back to bed, and that everything that I knew was turned sideways, and it was a little. It was disconcerting, and I was getting disappointed in myself that from day one I wasn't super inspired and running around and conquering this brave new world. This was a kick in the head for me, and I'm watching businesses around my music academy just close down permanently, and I'm heartbroken for these people. I know how much blood, sweat, and tears went into this, and there will be beloved things that are gone when we come out of this, but singing won't be gone. Music won't be gone. And I hope to see you in person on the other side. Hey, if you want to know more about me, please visit my website, johnhenny.com. Be sure to sign up for my free vocal warm-ups course. I show you how to warm up with a straw. You can also check out the podcast page. Most of these episodes are transcribed, and you can get downloaded PDFs if you want to collect some of your favorite podcasts just for reading here and there. And until next time, to better singing. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.